Please come and have a seat.
Can I sit here?
Anywhere you like. And silence your phones, please. Why don't you come and sit in the center so you can make sure the video is running?
Oh, you
No, no, I was about to say that.
Oh, okay.
See if you all have this and this with you.
This is blue. Is it supposed to be?
Yeah. It's kind of.
Is it
blurry.
running?
The picture is blurry. Maybe you don't have enough light here.
No, it doesn't seem to. But did you see my face in there?
Yes,
Yeah,
your,
it was
just your
clearer.
head. Your head
But
was big right there, but
maybe
it was still
something in the camera? No.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
It's a little better, right?
No, it's good.
It's okay.
Yeah.
We used to have better space, but with this structure for this week,
I think we should
Yeah.
move it out. It looks nice.
we need about 15 people to move this now. About 20 came to install it. This is for a chanting ceremony coming up this weekend. So make sure you have this and a copy of this with you. If you don't,
Do you have more of those?
I have extra.
Do you have one for you? Yeah.
I do, yes. Today is basically a discussion day. We pick one of the teachings of the Buddha and go into details of it, discuss it, and learn from it. But Bhante Mudita is here. He wants us to do a little calming down meditation for less than 5 minutes. Because some of you came expecting to do some meditation today, as we used to do. So we'll do precepts first, and that is on page 3 of this. And we are doing this in English. This is optional for you. If you don't understand anything about this, just stay quiet and not think about it. Homage to him, the Blessed One, the Worthy One, the fully enlightened One. Homage to him, the Blessed One, the Worthy One, the fully enlightened One. Homage to him, the Blessed One, the Worthy One, the fully enlightened One. I take refuge in the Buddha, I take refuge in the Dhamma, I take refuge in the Sangha. For the second time, I take refuge in the Buddha. For the second time, I take refuge in the Dhamma. For the second time, I take refuge in the Sangha. For the third time, I take refuge in the Buddha. For the third time, I take refuge in the Dhamma. For the third time, I take refuge in the Sangha. I undertake the precept to abstain from harming living beings. I undertake the precept to abstain from taking what is not given. I undertake the precept to abstain from sexual misconduct. I undertake the precept to abstain from false speech. I undertake the precept to abstain from intoxicating drinks and drugs that lead to heedlessness. All right. Meditation time. Please make sure your sitting posture is comfortable for you.
Excuse me. Then not put me heading the if you move it back, I think.
Or can I just iPad?
Yeah, you can adjust this.
It's not sitting properly on the keyboard, so I have done the best I can for about 5 minutes
that's
too.
fine. Yeah.
But that's okay. Or I can sit somewhere, maybe if if I can get one of those so I can sit on
No,
it.
no, it's good.
Is it okay?
Yeah.
All right. If you're happy, I'm happy. So, yeah, with that smile, let's center ourselves into this space, into the shrine room. With the awareness that you are here at the Great Lakes Buddhist Vihara, you came expecting some calmness and wisdom. With that intention, you can leave behind all the past and the future. The past cannot be edited. It has already happened. The future is yet to happen. What we have now is this moment. When you are happy this moment, you are happy the next moment, and the next, and the next. So we are conditioning a better future when we are aware of positive feelings and emotions and letting go of negative feelings and emotions. Take a deep breath. Feel it and release it. Take another deep breath. Slowly feeling it and release it. And another. Let's pay attention to the top of the head, top of your head. Relax, release and relax the muscles. At least mentally you feel that way. And wiggle your forehead, release, squeeze, relax. Your eye sockets, your face, your lips with a gentle smile. And neck straight, and the back of your head also relaxed. Sometimes shoulders have some anxiety, so let them be not too loose, not too tight. Feel the chest and the neck with a breath and relax. See if anything distracts you from your body. The chest relaxed, the back straight and relaxed. Your bottom relaxed and well positioned. Knees resting, but may start giving you numbness and pain. That is okay. You're free to move, change your posture, but do so with some awareness so you don't get distracted or you don't distract others. From your knees down, your shin bones, to your ankles, soles of your feet, and the toes. relax and release all the negativity. Welcome calmness and peace into your body from ground up. To the core of your body. Breathe in peace. Breathe out, let go. Peace. Let go. Peace. Let go. As you hear the sounds, they remind you of being aware and continue being aware. Sounds come, sounds go. Thoughts come, thoughts go. Nothing is permanent. Being mindful also means attending to every thought and making sure that you are aware of the direction that that thought is guiding you to. If it is a wholesome, good direction, you let it. And if it is not, you uproot it with some wisdom. Wisdom of letting go and abandoning and removing these thoughts. catch it before it grows. It won't control you. But there are good ones that needs to grow in the mind garden to make it full of beautiful flowers and plants and things. This is why we calm down, find peace and quiet spaces, to take a break from seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, physical sensations and thinking. When you find perfect stillness, you see beauty around you. Right, we can end this session now, and if you wish to continue your sitting, you are free to do so. Meanwhile, we will start the discussion. So, we have been doing this discussion quite some time now, and we started from the discourses in the middle length sayings, and we are moving to long discourses today, and as you can see, this is really long. Got about 10 pages total. This is an opportunity for people to come and learn the teachings of the Buddha from the canon itself, as the Buddha taught these teachings. And we did really, the one we ended with last week was a deep discussion. So then we needed a break from those deep stuff and decided to move to something simpler. Let's see how simple this is. But teachings like these, Venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi, one of the prominent monks, said these teachings were the ones that convinced him of the wisdom of the Buddha, not the ordinary, not the profound teachings of dependent origination and all kinds of other teachings, as I mentioned in that email I sent out to most people who received it. So this is how a householder, a person who is not a monk, is expected to live in the Buddha's, according to the, how the Buddha thought, according to the wisdom of the Buddha. So this is how the Buddha instructed householders. So there is a background to this that is not printed in the paper I gave you. That's just one paper. So I will cover most of it before we begin. So this was taught to a man named Sigāla. You only see Sigāla in English, but there's no way. I think if we try to put an N here, it will sound like Sigāla or something. But Sigāla is how the tradition reads his name. He was a son of a Buddhist family that lived in the big town Rajagaha. Rajagaha was, there was a note about, I think, the capital of Magadha kingdom at the time of the Buddha, so it was a very big city. So Sigāla's parents were devout followers of the Buddha, but the son, Sigāla, was indifferent to religion. He didn't like associating any religious teacher, thinking that they will teach him about generosity and he will lose his wealth. This was the reason he didn't like to come close to any spiritual teacher, because spiritual teachers ask you to donate. The pious father and mother could not by any means persuade their son to accompany them to visit the Buddha or his disciples and hear the noble doctrine. The son thought it particularly useless to pay visits to the Sangha. Sangha means monks. As such visits may entail material loss, he was only concerned with material prosperity. To him, spiritual progress was to no avail. Constantly he would say to his father, "I will have nothing to do with monks. Paying homage to them would make my back ache and my knees stiff. I should have to sit on the ground and soil and wear out my clothes. And when at the conversations with them, after so sitting, one gets to know them, one has to invite them and give them offerings, and so one only loses by it." This was his thought. Finally, as the father was about to die, he called his son to his deathbed and inquired whether he would at least listen to his parting advice. He said, "Yeah, totally. I shall carry out any order you may be pleased to enjoin on me." He replied, "Well then, dear son, after your morning bath, worship the 6 directions." This was the advice. The father asked him to do so, hoping that one day or other, while the son was so engaged, the Buddha or his disciples would see him and make it an occasion to preach an appropriate teaching to him. And since deathbed wishes are to be remembered, Sigāla carried out his father's wish, not, however, knowing its true significance. So he only worshipped the 6 directions. He went to the river. He was halfway to his shoulder in really cold water, and his clothes and his body is wet, and he just bows to the 6 directions, turning to every direction. That's what he did, which to us sounds meaningless. And it was the custom of the Buddha to wake up around 4 in the morning and then look through his third eye, and he then finds the best person who needs his help that day. So he realized Sigāla needs his help. So the Buddha decided to go in that direction for morning alms, to receive alms, not arms like we discuss here in the United States. Alms, A-L-M-S. So the Buddha had the idea of helping Sigāla and correcting him on his practice of worshipping every direction. So, and that is the basic background of it. So when this was taught, it came in the tradition, and it came from oral tradition, then this was preserved and later was written down. And in the 5th century, a monk named Buddhaghosa, who came from India, wrote commentaries on these to elaborate the words that people don't understand. And in his words, he says, nothing in the duties of a householder is left unmentioned in this. So this sutta is called the Vinaya of the householder. What is Vinaya? Vinaya is the code of discipline for monks. But Vinaya of you is this. So whoever practices these, you develop many things in your, many aspects in your life, and there's no decay expected in any part. So there's only growth. And Rhys Davids, one of the Pali scholars, Pali is the language used by the Buddha to teach these teachings. Now we are using the English translation. Rhys Davids was a translator who served in the Pali Text Society based in England, and he said, the Buddha's doctrine of love and goodwill between man and man is here set forth in a domestic and social ethics with more comprehensive detail than elsewhere. And truly, we may say even now of this Vinaya or code of discipline, so fundamental are the human interests involved, so sane and wide is the wisdom that envisages them, that the utterances are as fresh and practically as binding today and here as they were then at Rajagaha. Happy would have been the village or clan on the banks of the Ganges, where the people were full of the kindly spirit of fellow feeling, the noble spirit of justice which breathes through these naive and simple sayings. Not less happy would be the village or the family on the banks of the Thames today, of which this could be said. Rhys Davids lived in near Thames. So Ganges or Thames River doesn't matter. What is the river by Detroit? Detroit River. That is in the border between Canada and us. So we are preaching it by a river at the Great Lakes Buddhist Vihara. This translation I liked very much because it's simple words, and I was able to understand it. So we may not do the whole thing today. It's already 8, almost 8. We'll do it in parts. We'll go as far as we can. We'll finish at around 8:30. So this is number 31 of long discourses. How many we have in long discourses? I think 32 total discourses in long discourses, 10 in each. I forgot, but that doesn't matter now. This is what I heard the attendant monk of the Buddha saying this. He said this 3 months after the demise of the Buddha, that they all wanted to collect the teachings that were scattered in minds of the monks. So this monk had a memory like of an elephant. He remembered every single teaching of the Buddha, because no matter where the Buddha preached it, the Buddha has to come and teach it to him, so he remembers it. He was the memory bag, the hard disk of the Buddha. Memory stick. So on one occasion, the Buddha was living near the town of Rajagaha, at a spot in the bamboo grove called the Squirrel's Feeding Place. At that time, a young householder named Sigāla arose early and set out from Rajagaha with freshly washed clothes and hair, with palms together held up in reverence. He was paying respect towards the 6 directions, that is east, south, west, north, lower and upper, below and above. Meanwhile, the Buddha dressed himself in the early morning, took his bowl and robe and went into Rajagaha on alms round. On the way, he saw Sigāla worshipping the 6 directions. Seeing this, the Buddha said to him, "Young man, why have you risen in the early morning and set out from Rajagaha to worship in such a way?" So the Buddha just doesn't want to make this person feel uncomfortable by saying, I came for you today. So he's just pretending like he happened to see this man, although the Buddha knew who he is going to on that day. "Dear sir, my father on his deathbed urged me, 'My son, you must worship the directions.' So, dear sir, realizing, honoring, respecting and holding sacred my father's request, I have risen in the early morning and set out from Rajagaha to worship in this way. But young man, that is not how the 6 directions should be worshipped according to the disciples of the noble ones." So noble here refers to the ones who are practicing noble qualities taught by the Buddha, the qualities that uplift your mind from the unwholesome states to wholesome states. So those are noble practitioners. You go against the stream of defilements, when you hear and practice and cultivate your wisdom according to the instructions of the Buddha. So the disciples are the monks like us, or disciples are you, who are seekers, not just believers, or never believers, but seekers in seeking truth and teachings that speak to your mind. So then Sigāla asks, "Then how, dear sir, should the 6 directions be worshipped according to you? I would appreciate it if you would teach me the proper way this should be done." "Very well, young man, listen and pay careful attention to while I tell you." "Yes, dear sir," agreed Sigāla. The Buddha said this. So he doesn't define the 6 directions until later in this. So it comes, I think, in the middle. So each direction refer to some relationship you have in your life. Parents, children, monks, husband, wife. These are the directions that the Buddha pointed out, and what ways they need compassion from you, what ways they need loving kindness from you, is how the Buddha looked at the 6 directions. Just worshipping the 6th direction is meaningless unless you contemplate on what ways you can support this network that is like your immediate family, as you will discover later in this discussion. Do you have a question in your? Do I see a question on your face?
Well, it's just kind of a side question. Is it Sigālaka?
Yeah.
Does he know that this is the Buddha?
No.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Maybe he did.
To him as dear sir, not like venerable or.
You know, this is the thing about translators. Different translators, as I read this morning, uses different words like Lord instead of Sir, or Exalted One, or the Blessed One in the translations. I don't have the Pali to look, but in all this, Venerable Ananda used something like Bhagava, the Blessed One, which I think is how the devoted disciples would call the Buddha. But looking at the incident here, he may have never gone to see the Buddha, but must have heard of him because the Buddha was popular. And his parents, as we just understood, were disciples that, pious devotees who visited the Buddha frequently. But maybe he couldn't tell because he has never seen the Buddha. They didn't have Facebook or anything there, so to see at least a picture. So, and even some people, like one time in number 43 in Middle Length Discourses, the Buddha was visiting three monks living in a park. The gatekeeper stopped the Buddha, didn't want the Buddha to enter, just didn't recognize the Buddha as any person special. He just looked ordinary. This was the case with many monks who happened to walk into the same sojourn, like the stopping place for the night. They were praising about the Buddha, not knowing they were talking to the actual Buddha. The Buddha asking, and I realized, oh, this must be. So he looked just an ordinary person. When I think of the Buddha now, I think of, sometimes after meditation, some people have this radiance, the glow. I'm sure the Buddha had some of it. That's why they paint him with a halo, like Jesus has. I think we discussed this earlier. Now, Gandhi was a popular person, and Sadhguru nowadays is watched by millions. Sadhguru, not Sadguru, Sadhguru. He's very popular. I love his wisdom now. And he sat in meditation for 16 days in a row. He didn't know that. So that's what he says. So people gathered around him, offered a lot of things. He didn't know any of that. So he rose from meditation. This is Sadhguru. And people thought he can tell the future and do a lot of things. And when whoever's daughter is going to get married and all kinds of questions. And he asked, why are you asking these things from me? And then they said, you've been sitting here for 16 days, not eating or drinking or anything. He didn't believe it himself. So I don't know what state he was in. Usually a human body can only, as I understand, can only go so far, like 7 days. But this man apparently did it 16 days or 13. Somehow it was more than 10. And then he tried to stretch his limbs. He realized he couldn't, he had to wait. He did it slowly, so then he realized, oh, maybe I did sit that long. But in Buddhism, we encourage people to be aware, when mindful of what you are doing. As we discussed in one of the teachings, there is at least one level, and when you go to that level, you cannot even be aware. So you are pre-programmed, pre-conditioned to enter that level, and you come out from it according to how you have made the determination of it. Anyway, that's a little too far to go. So when I think of the Buddha, these popular people, these leaders come to my mind as giants those days, the Buddha was popular, and there were 6 other teachers who had huge followers, a lot of people, and the Buddha was another teacher like them. So now we are at section 3, the last passage. Young man, by abandoning the 4 impure actions, a noble disciple refrains from harmful deeds rooted in 4 causes and avoids the 6 ways of squandering wealth. So these 14 harmful things are the noble with the 6 directions protected has entered upon a path for conquering both worlds. What is both worlds? This world and the world that you go to after your death. Wherever you are headed, that's that world. This is like the summary of what the Buddha is going to teach. Firmly grounded in this world and the next, at the dissolution of the body after death, a good rebirth occurs in a heavenly world. So that's the intention of many Buddhists, to have a good birth. Also, everyone who live on this planet, most people don't know where they will go after death, but they want to go to a better place. And some people don't care, so they just do anything that, while they are living. So that's the danger, the Buddha saw. When you don't have, any clue that you will be born again, you just assume that this is the only life you have, then you eat as much as you want, steal, kill, do all kinds of bad things, or you just don't believe in any good thing. So that's why we need some teachers to come and say, social boundaries are important, relationships are important, and gambling and all these other things that people tend to do without any limit are harmful to one's progress. And that has been accounted for in this teaching. What 4 impure actions are abandoned? The harming of living beings is an impure action. Taking what is not given or stealing is an impure action. Sexual misconduct. Now this is engaging in extramarital affairs. Is an impure action. And false speech is an impure action. These 4 are abandoned by a good householder. So this is almost the 5 precepts that we observed, just before we started. What is missing here is what? Alcohol. The 5th one.
Not
That-
just alcohol though, right?
Not just alcohol. The thing that was recently legalized in this state is also included. This reminds me of a story from the Zen tradition. There was a monk, Zen monk, and I think to test him, one of his teachers, this is a harsh way to teach actually, asked him to do three things: to drink a bottle of sake, to kill the goat in the garden, or who happened to be around. So this monk must do one of these three things. So he decided to drink the bottle of sake. The next morning he woke up. The goat was on the table, the woman in the bed. Which means when you break the fifth precept, or when you drink alcohol, you break all kinds of other precepts. Every precept. Because you lose your mindfulness. Especially those who think, I will stop in my first glass, first shot. But that first shot is the one that persuades you to take the second one. The first shot itself has to be not taken. Because that is harmful to you, harmful to many people who are who have good social status. Even in Sri Lanka, come to us seeking advice on how to detox them from their habits. Very socially, high-profile people, they have come to this habit. They have a neighbor who is so inviting for these things, and I tell them, move from that neighborhood. Don't stay. Your children will do this exact same thing with their children because you happen to be friends. So this becomes a continuous thing. You have to constantly watch them, their directions, their moves, which people they receive calls from, and all kinds of. That's how you need to attend to such people. And Alcohol Anonymous is a thing here, but even then people fall into the trap again because they have something. Sometimes people have siblings who do this. I have siblings whom I haven't been able to save. It's really sad. Their life is, completely opposite of how I live my life. So that's why I have compassion for many people who are alcoholics or addicted to something, some weeds or some kind of things. So you cannot never let go of them. You have to constantly be behind them and help them. They need compassion from you. In Detroit town, in the evening you may find people walking like zombies. Those people need help. They don't see the value of their time here on this planet. And after death, I don't know where they will go. No wisdom. Maybe if they have good thoughts at the last moments, they will be born happy in a good place. We can only radiate loving kindness to them and help whatever ways we can. But that's about the fifth precept, breaking the alcohol precept or drugs precept. Summing up in verse, the sublime teacher said, so the same thing: harming living beings, taking what is not given, false speech, and pursuing the loved one of another, these the wise surely do not praise. So teaching in verses was a skill that the Buddha had. He could instantly make a poem, a melodious poem, and teach it with such voice so the person remembers it. Not that everybody did remember, but he would teach this later so monks remember, or when he teaches, monks are behind him so they remember what the Buddha taught. And section 5, What are the four causes of harmful deeds? Going astray through desire, hatred, delusion, or fear. The noble disciple does harmful deeds. But, young man, not going astray through desire, hatred, delusion, or fear, the noble disciple does not perform harmful duties. So, these four are Chanda, Dosa, Bhaya, Moha, as you have heard in Sinhala and in Pali. So desire, let's use the word obsession here. Compulsions, things that people cannot stop, addictions. This is harmful. You can give all kinds of examples for addictions, right? Addiction to social media, constantly updating things that happen to you that some people should not know about you, but you continually update things and it can be harmful to you. People hack people to death. In places like Bangladesh, where hatred, or in Myanmar, hatred between Buddhists and Muslims are strong. So you post something and then you receive a message about, a friendly message about where you live, and you provide information, and next day you are attacked. Because sharing anything with strangers, stranger danger is there in Facebook with all kinds of addictions. That's this. Any person who is addicted to anything doesn't progress well in life. There is something dark about their life, and they don't go around very well, or they don't achieve financial goals as they wish, and they live poor. They are born poor and die poor, live poor and die poor. And anger, you were talking about this earlier. When you drive, maybe you hit someone from rear, and you get angry, and you go to your office, and your boss is also angry about something, and you mentioned the law of attraction thing. Some people are sensitive to energies, emotions of other people. So in my response to you, I mentioned about being mindful when you talk to anyone who is crying in front of you. So mindfulness is important so you don't get trapped. You don't lose compassion with wisdom. Compassion is a charged word. It has to have wisdom in it. Otherwise, you also cry, and your mental state goes low. It's okay to cry, but then you get fooled by the images that your mind tells, and you then become weakened that you cannot help the person. So this, anyway, hatred or any other thing can be around, like different fragrances are around. So you invite what you invite to your center of your mind, and you totally can, there are people who used to be angry on the road, but something happened to them and they are no more that person. They don't get angry on the road, they drive as anybody does. They meet accidents, they don't get angry, they do what has to be done and move on. And those people have a lot of peace, calmness, and when you talk to them, you receive it from their eyes, from their body. You don't feel anger, you don't feel hatred from them, and it's so pleasant to be around such people. So hatred, there is a character the Buddha mentioned in some other teachings, hatred character. a personality that has a lot of anger in them. And those people, when you give meditation instructions to them, you are instructed to give teachings on how he or she can provide loving kindness, radiate loving kindness in such a way that people around that person feels that loving kindness from him. So he becomes a different person. So it's not good to just teach breathing meditation or some other meditations, not attending to the character of the person. Some people are lustful characters. Then you teach them about repulsiveness of the body, and look at the flip side, the other side of any body. So that is important before that person progresses in meditation. So that's also in here. Delusion, deluded by thoughts, deluded by an ego. I am the boss, I am this person, I should be defined this way and everybody should be respecting me and bowing down to me kind of thoughts. They come to people, and soon when people realize, they move away from such people. I am the best person who can do this, not anybody. That is really putting a margin around you that you don't welcome others' opinion. So these delusions that you are correct and others are wrong, these are all delusions. And fear has become a hindrance for many youth nowadays who live here, because you meet a lot of strangers, and people don't talk very much with strangers, and then there is a judgment in you that you are weaker than that person, or maybe that person is stronger than you, because there is no communication, and sometimes approaching to a stranger and asking something is considered impolite or rude in a culture, or smiling is also not encouraged. But in India, Sri Lanka, people smile a lot, and that's the thing that people who travel from here, here to Sri Lanka or India, first time they notice these things, and they also start smiling, and something about, we then notice that because they are mindfully making that effort. I still remember this woman who was on a bike. I was on the bus, and she was smiling and biking. She was clearly a white woman. That face I never forget. She was a happy woman in Gold Town. So I'm sure she learned it by coming to Sri Lanka and seeing how people smile. There's a thing about that, you instantly become friends, and you don't have any boundaries between, and you at least ask, how are you, and if you need, if can I help you kind of questions. So that way you don't have any fear being around such people. That's why when you go to a meeting, at least you ask people to introduce themselves and mention something, or their favorite ice cream or something that they like about them, so you break the barriers, right? And fear is also a barrier for people who have fears in public speaking, because nowadays people have to do a lot of public speaking, because you travel a lot of needs are around, and classroom speaking, and they want to build personality. Some teachers push students to do that, not teaching students how to really begin a speech, how to end a speech. Then these students really think too much about it, and that thinking causes fear. That happened to me. I think that happens to anyone who does not receive a format of how to do things. Then when you learn it, when you learn how to do it, your brain learns it. When your brain learns it, it becomes something that is not anxiety producing to people. And fear is, whatever you want to achieve in life is behind the wall of fear. Once you break that, you see what you want to achieve. Because with fear, people stop doing things. In Sinhala, there is a saying, Vasana avastha bharaganiming vasana akarshane kargatha. Accepting opportunity means attracting luck. People don't accept opportunities, fearing a lot of things. But when you just learn how to face things, fear won't change the direction of your life. Anxiety is about worrying about something that has not happened. Like the example of the child who hates his mom because mom is taking him to the dentist. And there's a lot of anger, a lot of disconnection. And then you go to the dentist appointment only to realize that the dentist appointment is cancelled. So all that fear, all that anxiety is just pointless. Waste of time, waste of energy. So this is why fear is fear, people shrink with fear. It's best to seek counseling, talk to others, and get help from psychiatrists or anybody to battle with this, or take help of some controlled stimulants, beta blockers, if you really want that, to go a short distance with it and then move on with it. These are available and sometimes I cannot give these advice to children, but I ask them to seek advice from professionals. Anyway, fear is a thing that has to be really seriously looked into and taken care of. If that is a thing that challenges someone's growth. So out of fear, some people does harmful deeds, and that should be avoided. So that is what the Buddha said. Summing up in verse, the sublime teacher said, desire, hatred, delusion, or fear, whoever transgresses the Dhamma by these, whoever Dhamma means teaching or the nature or phenomena. Whoever transgress means overcome these, has a reputation that whoever, what's the meaning of transgressing here?
What is it?
Transgress. Is it overcoming or suppressing?
I think it's like violate it, right?
What? Okay. Subdue.
Go against it. Yes.
Okay. Transgress is going against. Anyway, let's read the whole thing. Desire, hatred, delusion, or fear, whoever transgresses the Dhamma by these has a reputation that comes to ruin, like the moon in the waning fortnight. I think the meaning is that whoever is controlled by these loses reputation, doesn't have a good reputation, and it's like a moon that is covered, that is fading.
Right?
The moon that is the lunar moon, right? That is
New moon.
the dark, the new moon, I think. Not the full moon.
Yeah.
In different times, the Buddha mentions that whoever overcomes past misconduct and becomes a righteous person will shine like a full moon or a cloudless moon. Anyway, with that section, there's another part. desire, hatred, delusion, or fear, whoever transgresses not the Dhamma by these has a reputation that comes to fullness, like the moon in the waxing fortnight. It becomes a full moon. So with that, let's sum this up. Any questions before we end the session? Nope. Questions?
Why that they, I know it comes later, but why that drinking or the fifth precept, why didn't exclude it so it's so important by what?
It comes later.
Yeah, I
Expect.
expect.
Maybe it didn't fit the gatha, the verse that the Buddha was making, or maybe it was just enough to give him just 4, and the 4 became 5 later in different discourses, or maybe this person was not going to do it, not an alcoholic person, the Buddha. I don't know. It's so I can only give maybe answers to this question. Yeah.
So are you going to explain next Monday is like what happened to Sigāla, like what are this
We will
Training-
continue this discussion.
training this in this 6th direction? These
Yeah.
are symbolic, right?
Yeah. And how the Buddha wanted him to, the Buddha reinterpreted what, gave a new interpretation to what he was doing. We can really go in there if you are curious.
No, I'll wait till next Monday.
Okay.
I'll get the explanation from a monk.
Yeah, you take this home, please, and feel free to read it. But I think we stop at different places and go into discussions. We wanted a simple discussion today, right, from what we have been discussing earlier. As we usually do, we go to page 6, and at the very end there is a English translation of a teaching of the Buddha, and we read it together. The avoiding of evil, the doing of good, the purification of the mind, this is the Buddha's teaching. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. So thank you for coming. Happy meditation, and have a wonderful week ahead. See you next Monday.
Yeah.